Choose Viatude fungicide and unleash best-in-class sclerotinia protection in canola and premium protection against white mold in soybeans. Viatude contains a powerful premix of Onmira Active and prothioconazole. This unique combo delivers high-performance disease control, crop safety, mix compatibility, resistance management, and advanced mobility for excellent coverage and superior plant protection. Choose Viatude fungicide for stronger, more vigorous crops.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Thursday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. And today's show is brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. Let me tell you about Viatude, the new fungicide for canola and soybeans. Get best-in-class protection from two of the strongest sclerotinia and white mold actives on the market. You can find out more by going to pioneer.com/Canada. Okay, today on the Farmer Rapid Fire, we've got some, as I always say, some wily veterans of the show. We're going to be joined here today, of course, we got Rudy Meier he's in British Columbia, dairy farmer in the Fraser Valley. We got Krahn out in Rivers, Manitoba. Emery Huska is in Lambton County, and Patrick Dunphy is on the island in P.E.I. And our Pioneer area agronomist this week is going to be Greg Stops out of Ontario. If you have any feedback on today's program, of course, you can always send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can find Real Agriculture across all the social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. And we start off this week's Farmer Rapid Fire in South Pinette, and we're talking to Patrick Dunphy, who is, of course, in Prince Edward Island. Hey, Patrick, how are you doing?
Hey, Shaun, doing great, thanks.
So, what's happening on the island this week? What are you up to in the field?
Not a whole lot of field work going on here. We're actually in kind of that shell shock state, when planting and spraying is kind of caught up and over with, and you kind of wake up in the morning and you wonder what direction to head in because you've been going hard for 6 weeks and you kind of got some things under control. So that's where we're at here.
Now, what about the moisture conditions? Have you been wet or?
No, super dry ever since the winter time. Like really no snow. Spring came really early. We get on the ground mid-March down in the southeast here, and we've been dry ever since. I had half an inch of rain there a couple days ago. I guess you were in Halifax. We got a taste of that rain as well, but really that was the first moisture that we had in about a month.
Yeah, I'll tell you that the rain that was in Halifax on Sunday, it was like straight sideways. It was something out of Scotland. It was
right.
That poor Sale JP race. That was awful for those people.
Yeah, for sure. We didn't quite get as much as you guys would have got in Nova Scotia there, but we definitely got some, and it was welcomed. It was a cool rain, but it was rain nevertheless.
So are crops off to a decent start though, considering the drier bias?
Yeah, I think most guys are wrapped up, and I know on our farm, the spuds are poking up through, and the corn is up, and like I mentioned, we got our pre-emerges on, and we're just kind of waiting for the heat to turn on and see how things progress.
Yeah, but I guess from a potato perspective, you said the spuds are poking out of the ground. What are you looking for when it comes to say like, hey, really, really good emergence here on this year's crop? What are some of the key things that you're paying attention to?
Yeah, so we're going through the fields. We're making sure that the seed piece is in good condition, because we plant cut seed for the most part here in Canada, and on our farm it's no different. So we're making sure that those cut surfaces didn't open up any avenue for bacteria or fungus to get in there and affect affect the emergence of those potatoes. So yeah, mainly just that right now. In terms of, above ground diseases, there really isn't anything to worry about just yet. And weed control as well. We row shaped our potatoes last week and got the pre-emerge over the potato hill, so we're making sure that the weed control was on point.
Through the growing season in potato production, are you using, like, we're seeing more and more foliar applied products, like, in the biological space, or are you using any of those products in season?
Yeah, definitely. We've been down this path for a couple of years. Did some trialing with one of the big chemical companies here a couple of years ago, and seen pretty good results on the potato end, and have used that product on some acres ever since. It seems to be everyone is jumping on that boat right now, so the retailers seem to sell out of that particular one, and really haven't searched around for any comparables from the other guys just yet. But yeah, it seems to be going in that direction. And yourself, a lot of the time you can throw a bunch of snake oil on the crop there, and you don't really know whether it was 100 weight more or less here, or a bushel more or less. But with the biologicals that we've been using, it's been a pretty significant return, which is nice to see.
Well, that's why you got to do some check strips, right? I think try all the products that you can, but make sure that you're leaving a check strip so you know actually what you're comparing to, right?
Yeah, that's it. And you gotta throw everything against the wall this day and age, and just see kind of what sticks.
Now, in potatoes specifically, do you have to get approval from the processor in terms of being able to use some of those products, or or are you free to do whatever you want?
I'm not sure about the biologicals, but like any chemical in general that goes over the crop, they're sending out first of the growing season an approved list. Make sure that it's approved for Canada and US and export, that kind of thing, so that they can use our spuds for whatever they need them for. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, yes, they are making sure that we're using the right stuff.
Yeah, well, and speaking of the US and exports, still much hangover from the potato wart situation from a couple of years ago. I know a huge issue in P.E.I.
Yeah, everyone's kind of tiptoeing around that issue, I think, and it's just maybe a matter of time till it rears its head again. But for now, we're going to put that in our rear view mirror and just learn from those, I guess you could call it, mistakes, and see what happens.
Yeah. What's the level of optimism on the island this year as you talk to some of your neighbors and peers and friends that are farming?
Yeah, everything, like I said, the crop went in good shape. Conditions were good. It seems to be emerging pretty decent. So I think everyone is pretty optimistic in terms of, on our farm, we still have a lot of grain left from last year. We had some toxin issues in our corn, so we're working through that headache still. Usually would be coming on the end of shipping season right now on the farm, but it seems like we're just getting ramped up here. So I think going forward, yeah, in this corn season, I think guys are maybe going to use some more fungicide, do a few things different so that we don't go down this path again.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. It's I've been to the island a couple times. I think 3 in total. Twice in the winter, though. Not the time to visit the island, by the way.
Ooh, ouch.
One time in January.
You're brave.
It was fun though. It was good. Atlantic Greens Council meeting. But I
Right.
was there in the fall one year, like in September, and that was absolutely gorgeous. Like what would be the best month to visit Prince Edward Island?
I would say September for sure. You're kind of outside that, generic tourist window where you get, a crazy amount of traffic and tourists, and you can't find a hotel to stay at to save your life. So yeah, September, it kind of cools off a little bit in terms of the tourist angle, and our weather is still just as beautiful September as it is in August.
Yeah. Getting outside that tourist season, I think, would be really, really important. So
Oh, it's a must.
Yeah, with a lot of planting wrapped up, on your farm, do you celebrate the end of planting season? Like some farmers will, there's a bunch of things they can do to sort of, we're through the first stage. We got a long ways to go, of course. Do you do any celebrating when it comes to planting and seeding, or do you wait till harvest?
Not so much. It's just like the planter is parked one day and you're in the sprayer the next morning trying to get caught up on the next job. We're like everyone else. We're struggling with crew right now, so there's not enough bodies to go around. So, who gets to fill in on the shortfall is, the guy that owns it. So yeah,
lucky
there
you.
we go.
Lucky
me.
you. Yeah. Yeah. It's like the gym I go to. It's the general manager of the gym that's always working on Sundays.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, same sort of thing. Well, Patrick, I really appreciate you joining us here today on RealAg Radio, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. Hey, all the best to you, and we'll check in with you a little bit later in the growing season. Want to keep updated on how those potatoes are making out, okay?
Thanks, Shaun. Appreciate it.
We'll be right back on RealAg Radio with the rest of the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada.
Hey, Sandy.
Mike, nice to see you.
We're meeting next week, but I just wanted to ask, who would you recommend I talk to about financing my operating expenses this growing season?
Easy. Call CCGA. Their APP cash advances are flexible and can save you thousands in financing costs. You can get up to $250,000 interest-free, and anything over that is below prime.
Great idea. I'll call them tomorrow.
And check out ccga.ca.
Cash advances are made under the Government of Canada's Advance Payments Program.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch WheatPete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. And we take the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada, into Lambton, Ontario. We're talking to Emery Huska. Hey, Emery, how are you doing?
Very well, Shaun. How are you today?
I'm doing really good. Well, I say I'm doing good personally. What I know is not doing good is maybe the condition of that Ontario corn crop as you look out your window. How what are you hearing and what are you seeing?
In Lambton County, it's a tale of two soil types and two weather patterns. So on the bottom end of Lambton County, we have lighter soils. The clay belt is about 2 miles north of me, and there were some very, very nasty rainstorms that went through. Some folks ended up 4 and 5 inches of rain in one shot. Clay ground does not like that. So there are fields, if you drive north of me here, every 2 fields are not planted of 3. So that's a little scary. And for those folks that are still left with wondering what to plant, they're changing their intentions to soybeans.
So we could see, relatively speaking, like you say, for example, Lambton County, where you are, we could see a lot more beans than maybe we thought we would, say, 2 months ago.
Absolutely. And don't forget, there was a good wheat crop put in the ground in Lambton. So there's quite a bit of nice looking wheat in Lambton. They're very lucky that way. But again, 4 and 5 inches of water on low spots is not helpful to any crop.
Yeah.
So.
And you could be the best farm in the world. When you're getting 4 to 5 inches in a 48-hour period, like, good luck.
Yeah, it's very tough. And, it doesn't matter what our management techniques, those are Mother Nature's wild cards that we have to overcome. But there is something that's changing the thinking pattern this year, and that has to do with carbon tax and corn hybrid selections. So ordinarily, farmers might be willing to gamble with a little bit closer heat unit than what they would have had otherwise. Some are actually putting that into their equation this year, should they even bother growing corn. And even though we still have time to put a good, feasible corn crop in, The worry out there that they'll be stuck with an immature crop at harvest and the added costs of additional carbon tax is changing the thinking pattern for some farmers.
It'd help if we got 234
I don't think
passed,
that's a good
right?
thing. It would help a lot, but I think it'll help better to have a different mentality at the federal level. So, farmers make practical decisions and they're based on real world. And unfortunately, these political decisions are not taking into account farmer realities. So,
yeah. Well, Emery, I guess what concerns me is, or where I get confused is if it is causing some farmers to, back off on the corn acre, that conflicts with some of the federal government's ideas and promises and mandates when it comes to the biofuel.
how about trade? Well, how about trade agreements? We can have out of province grown corn, namely from our southern neighbor, come to our doorstep. They don't have the same burden of carbon tax, and that corn turns amazingly into Canadian production as soon as it crosses the Windsor border. So those bushels are not subject to the same costs that our farmers are being subjected to, and yet we're supposed to compete in a fair market. Doesn't make a lot of sense, Shaun.
It doesn't. And competitiveness, that's a word I think personally we need to think when we're creating policies. I don't care if it's a liberal government, a conservative government. We need when we're designing policies and we're debating policies, competitiveness for Canadian, of the Canadian sector, it needs to be more of a focal point, because I think that's lost, Emery, sometimes.
Well, it's a long-term decision-making thing that farmers go through based on decades of analysis and decades of planning. And it just seems that our political system goes from day to yesterday, and it doesn't equate to the common sense decisions that we make every day in the field.
Yeah, well put. Well, we talked about the condition of the Ontario crop, specifically in Lambton County, and this is there's a lot of variability really across southwestern Ontario for sure, and even into eastern Ontario. But we look south of the border and we see that USDA crop condition report this week, 75% good to excellent. How does that impact your marketing there, Emery? What are you thinking now?
If you look at the markets, yes, we've dipped down a little bit this week, but we're a long way from a crop, Shaun. And if the weather patterns are as severe as they're being claimed to be, we're one event away from a radical change on the market.
It's not how you start, it's
and
how
the
you
US
finish.
Well, the USDA also didn't have the explosive carryout that they had thought they might have. So, the world is a very precarious place right now, and we're a world market.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And
now, corn hybrids that did make it in the ground look good. Let's face it, the technology that we've invested in as an industry, the growing techniques that farmers have adapted, they talk resiliency at the government level, but let's look at our farmers today and pat them on the back and say, you've done a good job. We have a lot of evenly emerged fields. We have some very strong started corn plants. And even though we have failures in some fields out there, as a whole, our province is putting out a pretty decent corn crop in face of all these other challenges. So,
yeah. Well, Emery, you got some seasons under your belt. You probably just reflect on yourself, how your practices have improved, but also the technology, the hybrids that you're being able to put in the ground now, they are much higher performing, and they also they've removed some of the variability to compensate for some of your mistakes that you may make based on a good decision at the time, right? Like it's a lot different than it was, say, 20 years ago.
It's a tool. It's another. Right, but it's another tool just like everything else we deal with. And don't forget how important that communication tool is. We have experts like Albert Nuda talking to us in advance of the leaf spot the different the tar spot, the leaf, northern leaf perils that we're going to be facing this year. And I know my internet's unstable here. I'm sorry. But Albert, being able to plan in advance as a farmer based on real data and real information, that's helping our decision making as well.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be taken lightly.
Well put. And to that point, I was going to ask you, on Tuesday's show, we played a recent Ag Policy Connection podcast, and the whole show was about the future of ag extension and knowledge transfer. And you've just highlighted why it's so important. I think one of the big questions, though, Emery, is in the future, who pays for it? What does it look like? And what's the delivery mechanisms for it? I think that's a big question. And you've got a lot of experience with Grain Farmers of Ontario, of course. So do you have a perspective on the future of ag extension at all?
I think let's look forward. The next federal government, whoever that composition will be, needs to seriously sit down and have a industry view of what's going to happen in our food production in this province, our food and fuel production. And agriculture is part of this solution, and we need to have a thoughtful discussion on where that policy takes us. And that'll encompass all of these things. What sort of technologies are we going to accept? How are we going to plan who the farmers will be? I hear all the time about these 5 kids graduating from ag colleges being able to get 5 jobs. And I look at that, and that's great. But years ago, 5 kids graduated, and they were going to be owner entrepreneurs, farmers. So this mental discussion needs to take place desperately.
Well put. Okay, Emery, I'll let you get back to it. And really appreciate you joining us. And hopefully that corn crop looks a little bit better here in 2 weeks, okay?
We wish our best to the neighbors.
We'll be right back on RealAg Radio for the rest of the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada.
Join us for the Canadian Beef Industry Conference, August 19th to 22nd in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Spend time networking on the trade show floor, hear from keynote speakers, and take in breakout sessions designed to increase profit, manage your rangeland, and navigate trends. Get up close to advanced techniques and hands-on demos, and kicking it all off is Lamley's Bull event. Proud, sustainable, and innovative, we are beef. Registration is now open. Visit CanadianBeefIndustryConference.com for full details and to register.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit CanolaSchool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola. It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
Continue the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. And now we're going to Manitoba. We're in Rivers, Manitoba, to be specific, and we're talking to Ron Krahn. Hey, Ron, how are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, Shaun.
Well, how are you done seeding?
Yes, we just finished on Monday, just before the last big rain.
So. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, feels good.
You've been getting a lot of rain?
Yes, I just ran into an old farmer on the road actually while I was out scouting some wheat, and he said he'd been keeping track of rain for 38 years, and this was the 6th year where we had more than 100 millimeters in May. So definitely on the wet side, and I'm actually just looking at my rain records. I think I count 18 rain events, 18 measurable rain events since snow melts.
So we've got enough for now. Like Mother Nature, you can stop. Is that kind of how we feel?
Yeah, I'm starting to see some yellowing in our wheat. Any of the low spots, runs, wheat starting to show some moisture stress.
You know, Ron, one of the things that's been missing from this spring is heat. Like it has not warmed up.
Yeah, we've only had a couple days above 20. I'm so cold right now from scouting. I'm going to sit in the hot tub over lunchtime. So, so yes, we definitely need some heat. Just looking even at our corn, we're roughly 2 weeks behind where we were last year. Now, last year was exceptionally early, so that's it. You're kind of comparing two extremes, but yes, definitely heat. The forecast looks more promising now. There's some 22 and 26 in the forecast, so I'll believe it when I see it.
So you feeling pretty good about emergence then?
Yeah. Crop looks good for the most part. I think it's showing some cold stress. There's some yellowing, some unusual yellowing in wheat. Still trying to track down what it is, and I think some of it just boils down to cold and wet for too long. So,
what else are you seeing as you're walking around the fields and doing some scouting?
I'm always amazed that weed spectrums can be so different from one year to the next, and timing of when they come out. This year, I'm seeing that our fall spraying last fall was just such a great job. We're a big believer in using distinct and glyphosate anywhere where cereals are going to go the following year, and so we had to do basically no burn off for our cereals this spring, and it's keeping fields fairly clean now too. Not seeing much for wild oats, which is unusual. We're a big wild oat area. So found smartweed this year, which is kind of an unusual weed. So yeah, I'm always amazed at every year that the spectrum just seems to be a little different.
Do you have any resistance on the farm?
Yep. We have some confirmed resistance now of wild oats. So,
those weeds.
Yeah, it is what it is. I think we all knew that it was just a matter of time. Yeah, so we've confirmed some here now this last winter.
Yeah. From a crop marketing standpoint, I know you are very attuned with cost of production. I think that's an area where overall in farming we could be better as an aggregate. As you look at the markets here right now, how are you feeling about the year ahead, and how is the marketing going?
Yeah, I think pretty good. We're probably 95% sold on old crop. We're not big on pre-selling for new crop, although we do have one or two production contracts, some of our grains for seed as well, and so there's nothing we can contract there. The run up in wheat prices and canola prices over the last month and a half sure gave everyone a little bit, skip in their step. Markets had a bad day on Monday, but overall, it's probably a different discussion for another time, but I personally believe that cost of production and marketing really don't have much to do with each other.
Really?
I know that's very controversial, but
no. You can dive into that. I'm very intrigued, and I really respect your opinion on this. So just let's hear it.
Cost of production is great to know what your costs are, to figure out if I'm profitable or not. Also to decide what crops you want to grow, although our rotation is fairly set. But once we've decided what crop we're going to grow, I would say that cost production has very little to do with trying to decide what price I'm going to sell at, because I've seen years where the market is lower than our cost of production. What are you going to do then? Are you just going to say, no, I'm not selling because I'm not making any money? I would say that marketing, for the most part, now has to do with what are my cash flow needs? What are my bin storage needs? And what do I think the market direction is? All of those three aren't affected by cost of production. And so I know that goes against every marketing seminar you've ever gone to. And I've gotten into some lively discussions about it. But the market does not care what our cost of production is. And
very
so
true.
Unless you're setting some very specific targets, like if I'm 10% or 20% over my cost production, this is a signal for me to sell X percent, then totally fine with that. But other than that, once my crop is seeded and once I'm committed and once it's in the bin, my cost of production is irrelevant at that point for trying to decide when to sell, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, do I think prices are going up? Then I'm going to hold. If I think prices are going down, I probably want to be selling some. Do I need cash now? So anyways, that's,
no, Ron, this is good.
A long time about that. So
I wonder, so, and like I said, you're somebody that really knows your cost of production. Okay. So I think so that for some farms, it is helpful because, canola could be at, let's just say it's at an X price. Farmer thinks that they need X plus 2 in order to have made a profit, but it's actually X minus 1. That maybe that influences whether they're a little bit more aggressive on the selling and they're actually making money when they actually thought they were losing. Like there's a lot of variables. I understand what you're saying though. It's actually a fascinating debate. I'm actually glad you brought that. I think we need to dive more into this. It is controversial. Like I had Ranulph Glanville from Grain Fox on the show on Wednesday, and I was talking about how you need to know your cost of production. Now you're throwing pie in my face, Ron. I like it. It's good.
Yeah, I know I'm an liar in this, and I've debated this with different people. And don't get me wrong, I still think it's really important to have it because my spreadsheet is my kind of master spreadsheet for the farm is still tracking what margin we had. I know what selling points make me 10 and 20% margin, but when I'm making the decision on any given day, I really think the cost of production is very low on my factors of what I'm using to try and decide whether I'm selling today or whether I'm holding today. Makes
sense. As long as it's not an excuse for you not to know your cost of production, and I know you know yours.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, Ron, last question I wanted to ask you. On Tuesday, we played our latest Ag Policy Connection podcast, talking about the future of ag extension and knowledge transfer, research to the primary farm gate.
Yep.
What I guess, what in your viewpoint, while you want to talk about controversial things, how important is extension to you and your farm, what you do, and what do you think that needs to look like in the future? It's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. I am very much a proponent of get the government out of business, get government out of agriculture, with a few exceptions. And I would say that research and extension, those two kind of go hand in hand. We can do all the research, but if we don't have extension or a way of communicating that back to farmers. So I would say that research and market access probably are my two exceptions as to where I feel government does have a role. I wish they would get out of agri-insurance. I wish they would get out of agri-stability, out of agri-invest. But I think research and extension is that and market access would be the two places that I still feel that government does have a role in agriculture.
Hey, Ron, I appreciate your perspective. I said it too earlier this week. You can do as much research as you want, but if you can't communicate that at the farm gate level, just to expect people to read a bunch of research papers and implement, that is a very, very unfair request. Extension, very, very important component of all this. Yep. Hey, Ron, thanks so much for joining us. I'll let you get back to it and get your crops. Well, first of all, you got to get in the hot tub, warm up, and then get back out and finish that scouting. Really appreciate it, Ron.
Thanks very much, Shaun.
Okay, we'll be right back with more of the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada right
now. If you only listen to RealAg Radio, you only get half the picture. For greater insight into the issues that affect farming, tune in to RealAgriculture.com. Crops, livestock, machinery, farm management, and the markets, even food and travel. Real Agriculture Online digs deeper into the topics that affect the way you work and live. So get connected today. Read, watch, and listen to the people who know at RealAgriculture.com.
Choose Viatude fungicide and unleash best-in-class sclerotinia protection in canola and premium protection against white mold in soybeans. Viatude contains a powerful premix of Meier active and prothioconazole. This unique combo delivers high-performance disease control, crop safety, mix compatibility, resistance management, and advanced mobility for excellent coverage and superior plant protection. Choose Viatude fungicide for stronger, more vigorous crops.
And we continue the Farmer Rapid Fire, and now we're out to British Columbia, and we're in the Fraser Valley. We're talking to Rudy Meier. Hey, Rudy, how's it going?
Good morning. How's it going? Great.
Hey, man, I'm doing pretty good. How are the crops looking out the window there?
It's pretty late in the season. We've had a large amount of rain in May. It's been a going to be a late planting season. So for corn, even this spring, our January was really hard on us because BC had its warmest November, December in history. So like we were actually even planning to cut our cover crops in late December because it was like 15 degrees.
Wow.
But then January came and we had minus 25-degree weather. And then so it got cold and we had winter kill. So we lost most of our cover crops. But my brother and I, my twin brother and I that dairy farm together, we kind of hashed up a new kind of plan that, this year we actually went in early March and drilled in Western ryegrass so we could actually get a crop off. And our plan was to do a late cut because since pretty much 70% of the winter wheat died, we were like, all right, well, we'll just we'll drill in early. And now, the grass is probably like almost 5 feet tall. So it is working in our favor. And we might be doing that in the future, knowing that we have either duck or winter kill. So we're probably going to start gambling by only planting 50% of our grass seeds in the fall or pounds per acre, and then going in March and going in with the remainder 50% and drilling that in and just cropping it later instead of losing 70 to 80% of 100% to winter kill. But some farmers are like split. They have half their crops planted in corn and half not, and the windows have been short last month, like maybe 2 or 3 day weather spans, and so those are the things that are happening. But through dairy, producing milk production is quite well, and we're actually being, I guess, helped out with the beef pricing. So since dairy farmers have gone so much to Angus breeding into their herds, because the price of an Angus bull calf is so much higher than a Holstein, farmers are able to capitalize on that extra income. It's huge. So, and the next 6 months, we're going to be given incentive days. So July, August, September, we're going to have 2 extra days for incentive days for milk production, and then 1 more extra incentive day of production in October, and then we'll reevaluate in November. So those are good things that are happening for the dairy guys, but the vegetable guys have got pretty hard because we've had 2 hailstorms in the last week. So whoever had their vegetables cropped, planted, it took the hit pretty hard. We've had some really cold mornings, like 10 degrees. So it's just been very uncommon weather. While a year ago, we would have already had the corn in the ground and the planters parked in the shed. So
will some of that corn maybe not get planted in the Fraser Valley, and maybe people go in with, like, say, a barley or something and use that for silage?
Yeah. We could plant this week. We've usually I had an older brother that dairy farms as well, and he planted late. We actually swapped out our corn bags from 2,500 heat units down to 23. You can even go down to 2,200 heat units. That's about the last you could do. But yeah, even last year, you bring up barley oats. That was actually a result where farmers that lost their cover crops, they just plowed under that field and threw barley oats in, and actually got a barley oats crop off, then replowed and put corn in 1st of June. So, the idea of almost 3 crops per year is starting to come into effect, that farmers are going to plant something, crop it, replant in the fall, and maybe harvest it and then do a short crop. So, with the climate changing weather, it's now farmers are becoming more creative on ways to capitalize on these windows, and you just can't plow a field under anymore without taking any kind of production off it. So you just look at and you're like, all right, if you have dead loss or frost or winter rot, just go in there, drill in there as early as you can, because the seed will come, and then you might have a later first cut. But if we like, so even now we would drill or plow that field under now and replant it. It's going to be 60 days before we get a cutoff again. So those fields that we drilled in March, we intended on actually plowing them under because they were last year's cornfields, but we're not going to do that now. Now we're actually going to go in and side dress and drill in a barley oats in there so we can continue to take a crop off every 30 days.
Yeah. Rudy, you mentioned rye. Have you used any triticale at all?
We did. The last time we did it was actually fall of 2021, and the flood killed it out. But we love the idea of triticale. We like the high sugars and the moisture it brings in, and we've used it in the past, right? It's just some farmers just, if you're using it as a filler of a heavy crop, right, to fill your bunkers, people have done it. But a lot of times in the valley, people are using traditional orchard grass, tall fescue, Italian rye, fall rye, and then winter wheat in your high fields. So, and then again, even if you have a field with a low spot, usually we're drilling in Italian ryegrass that can just take the compaction and the water a little bit better than orchard grass. So there's a lot of experimenting. We've gone in and drilled barley oats in a bunch of fields for a lot of it is used for like weed control. So if we want to have a field where we feel like we won't be able to spray it, we'll go in and plant barley oats in it. And then after the first cut of that, after the barley comes off, then we'll go in and spray whatever weeds weren't killed off and then go in and do another side drill. So it's funny how a field is becoming more and more less tilled, and you're just drilling in just to keep the crop going.
Yeah, very cool. A lot of flexibility and a lot of different moving parts there, and just trying new stuff. So I like that a lot. It kind of translates into the question I've been trying to ask everybody this week. On Tuesday's show, we talked about the future of ag extension. Information, agronomic practices from research to the farm level. How important is extension to your farm? And do you talk to some of those researchers and work with them, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we're always trying to get an edge, right? Like the innovation of cropping is coming in huge, especially with water usage. A lot of guys are trying to find out, how can we irrigate our crops with, minimum compaction and maximum absorption, right? And again, we always we work with Richie Smith Feeds here, and we're always trying to use a mixed blend, something with a little bit of everything in it, just so we can cover fields that where you'll see a field that will take maybe a ryegrass or tall fescue better, and it's always like orchard grass is our best stand. We always get the best absorption, best growth, good sugar levels. Like the cows really go good on it. But like again, you want to go out and plant those other stands to kind of build an ultimate practice. But the biggest trend is now farmers are just becoming more of a commodity basis because the cost for commodities is so much cheaper to do on-farm feeding than do a TMR ration right from the mill. And those are big things, but like a lot of it is just, again, reducing input costs. That's our biggest thing that we're doing now. We're trying to reduce labor and even though you don't want to buy that new tractor, those eco settings you save so much more fuel than driving that old tractor that just isn't becoming efficient. So like, again, with fuel and feed costs and all these things that we're trying to mitigate. And again, we live close to the UBC University Center that's in Agassiz, which is in the Fraser Valley. And we're always working with them on new plots and things like that. So it's cool. A lot of farmers are trying to experiment, and it's it kind of feels like the old practices are becoming the new practices again, where you hear your grandfather or your father used to plant a field of alfalfa here or there, and all of a sudden it works in that one field. So I think you have to stop looking at a blanket way of growing your farm and see which variety works good in that field.
Yeah, what goes around comes around. What's old is new again. We see this in terms of weed control as well. Hey, Rudy, thank you so much for joining us here this week on the Farmer Rapid Fire. All the best to you out there in the fields, okay?
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. That is Rudy Meier out of the Fraser Valley. We'll be right back with more to finish up the Farmer Rapid Fire here, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio for the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. Make sure you check out Viatude. Great opportunity when we're fighting Scarlatina and white mold. You can find out more by going to pioneer.com/Canada. Speaking of Pioneer Seeds Canada, we're joined by area agronomist based out of St. Mary's, Ontario. It is Greg Stops. Hey, Greg, how's it going?
Great. It's fantastic to be back with you, Shaun. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, now you are parked on the side of the road. We're making the safety check here. What area do you cover for Pioneer?
So today I'm in beautiful Perth County. I'm located in St. Mary's, Ontario myself, but I cover pretty much north end of London up along the lake, the bulk of Perth, Huron, and Bruce counties for Pioneer. Yeah.
So out looking at fields, how would you describe emergence of corn in your territory?
So across my territory, I'd kind of describe it as average. I think we've had a pretty good year in terms of lots of heat to get the crop up and going. But at the same time, we've had a challenging year from, a moisture perspective, right? With a lot of rain coming kind of fairly intermittently. That obviously pushed things pretty late for growers. Some have been very patient and had perfect planting conditions and are achieving perfect stands. But others kind of, took that gamble, looking at rains, looking at moisture. Fields were that 80% fit, which maybe this year was fit enough, right? And there are kind of those fields that are showing up with stands a little bit lower, a little bit more challenged. I'm not saying that they're not still good. Most of the fields I see are still in a really acceptable stand situation. Uniformity is okay. There's maybe a little bit more a few more runts that struggled to emerge. It's not perfect, but I'd say it's pretty close to average across most of the area.
And I was having breakfast in Guelph yesterday, and the agronomist I was with was saying, even though we've been pretty wet, we actually could use a little bit of rain, strangely, because of just that top soil profile.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a little bit more the case with some of the beans that we have out there. Most guys got going a little later on beans, and they all went in fairly quickly. Some of the soil types that we have, are a little harder, a little heavier soils that can crust over. So a little bit of moisture and a little bit of rain that's forecast to come here shortly will probably help get a few more of those beans up and going, right? I think the case is true with corn too, though, right? Where those fields that I mentioned were kind of 80% fit. Some of them we are seeing a little bit of sidewall compaction, those trenches that didn't perfectly close, right? And the plants are up, they were at the right depth, they got going. But of course, you're always concerned about that sort of hatchet root syndrome growing along the trench, right? And a little bit of rain will help in terms of softening that sidewall and getting those plants along a little further so they can get their roots below that seed trench and then branch out rather than getting stuck kind of in that trench. If things were to go dry now, I think we'd actually see a lot more of the potential mistakes or those spots that were probably not quite as fit as we thought.
Corn's so finicky, just so finicky.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, but it's worth it.
That's what we keep telling ourselves. No, in all seriousness, it very much is. Now, you did mention soybeans. Stand there still pretty average as well?
Yeah, for the most part, it's pretty good. One thing I will say is this year in corn and beans, we've seen a lot more insect pressure than I think we've seen in the last few years. And that relates to the fact that we didn't have a very harsh winter this year. So there's a lot of, there's a bit of seed corn maggot. There's a lot more wireworms that you're finding in spots, not every field by any means, but, and then a lot of slugs in some of the trash too, right? Because we didn't get some of the snow cover that we needed in spots to break down some of the residue. So there is challenges kind of on that front of things that have thinned out some stands, but for the most part, our stands are pretty good on beans too. And it's early to tell in some areas because we did just finish up planting, maybe a week ago. But there's a really good establishment from the stuff that's there and has been in for a little while yet. And even the insect pressure hasn't kind of done anything to the point where it would limit stand establishment, where you're thinking of a lot of replants, at least in our area.
Yeah, so. And is planting almost complete in, say, where you are in Perth County?
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty much done. So we just wrapped up beans probably this last weekend, but corn's essentially done. There's a few fields here or there, but if you consider it 99% done across the board. The fields that are yet to be planted will go into edible beans in Huron and Perth at this point, and that's where growers' focus is. A lot of guys this week now are kind of done with planting, and they're focused on trying to get that last little bit of the T3 fungicide on wheat, to be honest, because the weather conditions we've had are pretty conducive for a fusarium year too. So.
Yeah, I don't care if you're in central Canada, eastern Canada, or out in western Canada. The sprayer season and the seeding planting season, they just there's not a lot of rest for the wicked. It's just
it never ends. Yeah. Whether you're a custom sprayer or an agronomist, your life never gets any less busy. So.
I had somebody explain it to me. It was a couple weeks ago where they said they always feel by the time they get through the growing season sprayer exhaustion. They're spending so much time, so many passes now with that intensive management of foliar applications, and we're doing fungicides and of course weed control, and sometimes we're doing pre-harvest in Western Canada. Like a lot of time, that sprayer's logging a lot of passes through the field.
Absolutely is. It's absolutely necessary. The more we want to get out of these crops, right? Like you said, we got to feed it, and we got to kind of, all of these things tend to be necessary. I mean, maybe not all of them, right? But we got to prove those things to ourselves. And there are so many passes that do really help, but you got to be conscious of that sprayer exhaustion. Like you say, it's not easy to go over these fields. And when the weather element throws challenges your way, right? And you can't get in, right, that pushes you and stresses you out a little bit more too.
This time of year when you're doing crop scouting, how many steps a day you get? Like 20,000 probably?
Probably that, yeah. I'll be honest, I didn't charge my Apple Watch the other day, so it kind of died on me, and I've lost track of steps today. But it's more than normal, that's for sure, and a lot more kilometers on the truck too. It's amazing how far you can go in a day walking and driving.
Absolutely. So, well, hey, Greg, thanks a lot for joining us here today on the Farmer Rapid Fire, and thanks to Pioneer Seeds Canada for being the sponsor of the show.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me on, Shaun. It's always a blast. We'll look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely. Well, make sure everybody you go, like I said, go to pioneer.com/Canada to find out more about the seed portfolio as well as Viatude as well. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and we will chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.